And Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
I confronted the father of my children when he turned up rich after 12 years without a single call to our children. My life changed completely 12 years ago, when my then-husband Mark, who was 38, confessed to me that fatherhood was not what he wanted. After 5 years together and 2 young children, he explained to me that the responsibilities of being a father were too much for him and he preferred to focus on his work. He told me directly that family life made him feel trapped and that he needed freedom to grow professionally. His words took my breath away. One moment we were a close family facing the challenges of raising our children together, and the next I found myself a single mother of 2 5-year-olds, trying to understand how it had all fallen apart. At first, I held out hope that Mark would change his mind, that maybe he was just overwhelmed by everything that being a father entails and that at some point he would realize what he was letting go of. I clung to a faint hope that one day he would wake up thinking of Liam and Ava's little faces and decide they were worth fighting for. But it never happened. He left with hardly any explanation, barely saying goodbye. The divorce papers arrived the following week. It all happened so fast that I could hardly process it. One day we were a family, with problems yes, but united, and the next he was gone. He didn't even try to fight for visitation rights or ask for shared custody. It seemed like he didn't want anything to remind him of what he had abandoned. He accepted without protest when the judge ordered him to pay the minimum child support. After that, he moved to another state and disappeared completely. It was as if he wanted to erase any trace of us from his life. Liam, who was 5 at the time, was old enough to realize what was going on and to ask questions. He would come up to me with those innocent eyes and ask, "Where's Dad? When is he coming back? What do you say to a small child when their father decides to leave?" I did the best I could, telling him that Dad had to go away for a while, but that didn't stop him from asking questions. Some nights she would sit staring out of the window at the driveway, as if expecting to see Mark's car arrive at any moment. Ava was only 3 years old, and although she was too young to understand what was happening, she could sense that something had changed. She would walk all around the house calling out to him. "Daddy, Daddy," she would repeat over and over again, her little voice echoing around the empty rooms. It broke my heart to hear her. I would hug her with all my might, but no hug could fill the space that Mark had left. At the time I was 34 years old and suddenly the whole weight of supporting our family fell on me. Although I had a stable job, it wasn't enough to cover all the expenses. The pension that Mark sent was barely enough for the basic bills. The first few years were like living on autopilot, every day was a new battle. I would get up before the sun to prepare lunchboxes, take the children to nursery and run to work. After an exhausting day at the office, I would rush home to pick them up, make dinner, help with homework and read them a bedtime story, only to fall into bed exhausted. Many nights I would lie awake worrying. Would I be able to pay the rent this month? Would I have enough for Liam's school supplies or Ava's dance classes? Would my children grow up thinking they weren't enough because their father left them? The worry was constant, like a weight that never left me. Liam, although very young, seemed to understand my difficulties. He was always a calm and observant child, who carried more responsibilities than he should have at his age. He made very tender gestures to try to help. I remember once I was very stressed about money, and he came in with his savings from his allowance and offered it to me, saying, "Mom, I think you need it more than I do." It was something that broke my heart and filled me with pride at the same time. He would try to fix things around the house with his toy tool set, banging on loose cupboard doors and insisting he could fix it. He would look after Ava when I was busy, reading her stories or helping her color. Liam carried a lot of weight on his small shoulders and, although I appreciated his strength, I was constantly worried about the emotional toll this would take on him. Ava, on the other hand, was pure energy. From an early age she showed a strong character, always asking questions and testing limits. She had an impressive determination. I admired and encouraged her spirit, although I also noticed how deeply she felt things. As she grew older, Ava began to show signs that she was affected by rejection. She didn't say it directly, but it showed in little comments that broke my heart, like when she mentioned that her friends' parents went to watch their soccer games or how she hated Father's Day at school. Once she came home very upset because the teacher had asked them to make a card for Father's Day and she didn't know what to write. She tried to act as if she didn't care, saying things like "I don't mind" or whatever, but I knew it wasn't like that. Ava was strong, but she was still a child who needed to feel loved and valued. Mark's absence left a void in her life that she didn't always know how to express. The hardest part for me was having to be everything to them. I had to be mom and dad, provider and caregiver, the one who sets limits and the one who consoles. I wanted to protect them from the pain caused by Mark's decisions, but it was impossible to erase it completely. All I could do was show them that they were enough and that I loved them without limits. Over time we established a routine, although it wasn't easy. We were living hand to mouth and had to make many sacrifices. Liam wanted to join a school club, but I couldn't afford the fees, and Ava had to make do with second-hand football boots because new ones were beyond our budget. Even so, we found moments of happiness wherever we could. I did my best to make sure the children felt safe and happy, even when I could barely keep my head above water. Meanwhile, Mark seemed to be living the life he had always wanted. I found out things through mutual friends or social media. He'd been promoted at work, he'd bought a luxury apartment, and he was always traveling to different countries on business. In the photos he looked happy. He was living exactly as he had always dreamed, climbing the career ladder, seeing the world, enjoying all the luxuries that come with success. But not once did he communicate with us, not even to congratulate his children on their birthdays. No calls, no cards, nothing to show that he acknowledged their existence. At first I tried not to hold it against him. I told myself that maybe he was too busy adjusting to his new life, and that one day he would remember that he had a family. But the years passed and I honestly stopped worrying about it. The more time that passed, the less I thought about him. I concentrated on raising Liam and Ava and making sure they knew they were loved and that they had everything they needed from me. Now Liam is 20 and in his second year of university studying engineering. He works part-time and is doing very well. He is still quiet, but he has become a very mature and strong young man. Ava, now 17, is about to finish high school. She maintains that determined spirit and talks about applying to several prestigious universities. Both of them have become incredible people despite everything. And then, without warning, Mark sent me an email last week. He is 50 now and has just retired. He told me that he sold a company that he helped to create and that he has been thinking about the decisions he has made in his life. He says he wants to reconnect with the children. He mentioned that he wants to set up an investment fund for them and that he hopes this can be a new beginning. He wrote that he wants to make things right and asked me to help him organize a meeting. It was very strange, like reading a message from someone I don't know. I told the children because they had a right to know. Liam reacted with indifference, saying that Mark had made his own decisions. Ava, on the other hand, was furious. She called him a stranger and said she wanted nothing to do with him. But I could see that behind her anger there was pain. It's one thing to feel abandoned and another for that person to try to come back into your life as if nothing had happened. I still haven't replied to Mark. I don't even know what to say to him. Part of me wants to shout at him about all the damage he caused when he left and how his absence has affected our lives, but another part thinks it's pointless. What would be the point? The children are old enough to decide for themselves, and it's clear that for now they don't want a relationship with him. Even so, I can't help feeling confused. Should I encourage them to at least listen to him? Would it be better for them to have some kind of closure? Or would I just be opening the door to more pain and disappointment? I am turning to you because I don't know what the right answer is. Has anyone been through anything similar? How did they handle it? I don't want to make the wrong decisions for my children, and I feel like I'm walking on very delicate ground. Any advice you can give me would be very valuable. Update 1. Hi everyone. I want to start by thanking you for all your support, advice, and kind words. I was surprised to see that my story touched so many people, and it makes me feel less alone in dealing with this situation. I'm going to answer some of your questions while telling you what has happened since my last message. This whole thing has been like a roller coaster of emotions, but your comments and support have helped me a lot. First, I want to clarify something that some of you mentioned: why I considered listening to Mark. It's not because I'm weak or ready to forgive him just like that, but because as a mother, if there was even the slightest possibility that Mark's presence could help my children either with money or emotionally, I felt I should at least consider it. But I would never force Liam or Ava to see anyone, much less the man who left them. In the end, it was their decision, and I was always going to respect it. After sitting down to talk to Liam and Ava again, now that we were calmer, it was clear that we all felt the same. They were both sure that they wanted nothing to do with Mark, not even his money. They said that any attempt to have a relationship with him now felt like he wanted to buy their affection, and that seemed disrespectful to them. Liam said very clearly, "I don't want a penny from someone who couldn't even call on my birthdays." Ava, with her usual strong character, added that accepting his money would be like letting him get away with it after all the years he ignored us. So I replied to Mark briefly and directly. I congratulated him on his achievements and on selling his company. I also told him that Liam and Ava did not want to reconnect with him or accept any kind of help, not money or anything else. I made it clear that their decision was final and based on years of feeling abandoned. I didn't try to soften things. I explained as kindly as I could that although their intentions to make things right now might be good, it was too late. They had built their lives without him and didn't feel there was any room for him now. Sending that email made me feel better than I can explain. Some of you suggested that we accept the money because, after all, he owed it to us, and although the idea is tempting, I simply couldn't do it. We have worked too hard, Liam and Ava and I, to let him come back now and throw money at the life he chose to leave behind. It's not pride, it's principle. I want my children to know that we don't need anything from someone who turned their back on us. The life we have built is ours, and I will not let his money put a price on it. As expected, Mark did not take the rejection well. He sent me another longer and more emotional email. He talked about how he has changed and regrets his decisions. He said he is alone and hoped we could start over. He even suggested that Liam and Ava might one day regret not having a relationship with him. Reading his words, I felt very angry. Where was this regret when Ava cried at night wondering why her dad didn't love her enough to stay? Where was all this maturity when Liam suffered thinking he wasn't good enough for his father to stay? I didn't reply. I think there is nothing more to say. It wasn't just the email that brought back painful memories these days. The whole situation made me think of things I hadn't remembered for years, like the birthdays when the children wished for their dad to come back. I remembered when Ava, who was 7, wrote a letter asking why he didn't love her anymore, and how I had to explain to her carefully that we couldn't send her a letter because we didn't even know where he lived. I remembered all the times I saw Liam quietly watching his friends with their parents, pretending it didn't hurt when I knew it did. For Liam and Ava, these have been emotional days. Liam is quiet as usual, but I can tell that all this has stirred up feelings he hadn't resolved. He's keeping busy with college and work, but there's something about his silence this week that worries me. Ava, for her part, has been more direct about how this opened up old wounds for her. She says she feels that Mark is trying to change the story by acting as if we matter to him now when we didn't matter to him before. It's hard to see them go through this, but I'm proud of how they're handling it. They're very strong even when it hurts. Personally, I've also been thinking a lot. I think a part of me always wondered what I would say to Mark if he ever came back. I imagined having a great moment where I could finally tell him everything I had kept inside. The anger, the pain, the betrayal. But now that the moment has arrived, I don't feel the need to tell him much. I think that's what growth is all about, realizing that you don't need forgiveness from the person who hurt you to move on. Some people here shared their stories about reconnecting with absent parents, and I want to thank them for that. It has helped me to hear about different experiences. For now, I am concentrating on supporting Liam and Ava as they process their feelings about all of this. I have also decided to go back to therapy. I used to go years ago, but life got very busy and I stopped. This whole situation made me realize that I still have unresolved feelings that I need to work on. For anyone reading this who has been through something similar, thank you for your advice and support. It's not easy, but it helps to know that there are others who have faced similar situations and come out stronger. I'll keep you posted if anything else happens, but for now, we're focusing on healing and moving forward, as we always have. Update 2. Hi everyone. When I wrote the last update, I really thought that this whole thing was over. Mark had gotten in touch, I had responded for my children, and we were all getting on with our lives, or so I thought. But life had other plans and things got complicated in a way I hadn't expected. Mark turned up at our house. Yes, he arrived unannounced, standing outside shouting for Ava and I to open the door. Liam wasn't there, he was at work, and to be honest, I wish Ava and I hadn't been at home either. Seeing him standing there was very strange. He looked desperate and, although a large part of me wanted to ignore him, another part felt that Ava needed to see for herself what kind of person he was. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. As soon as he entered, Mark started making excuses and justifications for his past. He said that everything he had done, the years without communication, the focus on his work, abandoning us completely, had all been for us. He insisted that he had left to create a better future for Liam and Ava, to give them a life of luxury and privilege. Hearing him say this was almost unreal, as if he had rewritten history in his mind to become the hero of a story that never existed. Ava was there, with her arms crossed, with no expression on her face, but her silence said a lot. I realized that I didn't believe a word he said, and neither did I. Mark's words had nothing to do with the reality we were living. He didn't leave to give us a better life. He left because he didn't want the responsibilities of having a family. When he saw that neither Ava nor I were reacting as he wanted, Mark changed his strategy. He addressed Ava directly, softening his voice, trying to convince her. He started talking about her future, mentioning how he could help her travel the world before starting university. He painted a picture of luxury vacations, all paid for by him, as if that would be enough to make her forget the years he ignored us. Ava said nothing, but her body language made it clear that she wasn't interested. It was painful to see how he tried to manipulate her. It was obvious that he thought he could buy her affection or convince her with grand gestures. When he saw that none of it was working, his attitude changed completely. The pleading and charm disappeared, replaced by anger and manipulation. He turned on me, accusing me of turning the children against him. He said that I had brainwashed them into forgetting all the things I had supposedly done for them when they were little. Hearing him say that made me so angry. The truth is that I have never spoken ill of Mark to Liam or Ava. I didn't need to. His actions, or rather his lack of actions, spoke for themselves. Even so, standing there and listening to him twist the story was like a slap in the face. I wanted to say something to defend myself and set the record straight, but at that moment I was paralyzed. Mark didn't stop there. He went on and on saying that I had ruined the relationship I could have had with his children. He acted as if he were the victim, completely ignoring the fact that he was the one who chose to leave. He even had the nerve to suggest that I had made it impossible for him to come back sooner, as if that had ever been a decision I could control. Before I could reply, Liam arrived home. It couldn't have come at a better time. He came in, immediately sensed the tension in the air and asked what was wrong. Mark tried a different tack again, this time addressing Liam. He started talking about how proud he was of his achievements, how he had been following his progress and knew he had a great future ahead of him. He said he wanted to be part of that future, to support him in whatever he needed. Liam wouldn't let him finish. He simply told Mark to leave. His voice was calm but firm and left no room for discussion. Mark tried to resist, insisting that he had the right to see his children and be part of their lives, but Liam stood his ground. He told Mark that he had lost that right the day he left, and that nothing he could say or do now would change that. Seeing Liam handle the situation with such strength and clarity made me feel incredibly proud. He didn't let Mark manipulate him or make him feel guilty. He simply defended himself and Ava in a way that I hadn't been able to at the time. Mark left after that, but not without making one last comment. He said that one day we would regret pushing him away and that we would realize that he was only trying to help. It was the same old Mark, always blaming others and playing the victim. After he left, I sat down with Liam and Ava to process everything that had just happened. Ava was furious, saying she couldn't believe he had the nerve to show up and expect forgiveness after everything he had done. Liam, as always, was quieter, but you could tell he was upset too. He said he felt like Mark was trying to rewrite history to erase the damage he caused by throwing money at the problem. All of this has been emotionally draining. It has brought up painful memories not only for Liam and Ava, but also for me. I've been thinking a lot about the life we've built since Mark left. It hasn't been easy, but it's ours. We've faced problems together, grown together, and become stronger. Mark can't come along now and want to take credit for any of this. I'm still processing everything that happened, but one thing is clear, we don't need Mark and we never will. His presence or absence does not define who we are. We have built a life full of love and strength, and no amount of money or empty apologies can change that. Thank you to everyone who has followed this story and offered their support. These have been difficult days, but knowing that there are people who understand and care has helped a lot. I will keep you posted if anything else happens, but for now we are concentrating on healing and moving forward. Update 3. Hi everyone, I'm writing again because something else happened a few days ago and I think you should know. Things are finally over, but not without one last dramatic moment. Ava and I were doing our normal shopping at the supermarket. It was an ordinary day, until we ran into Mark. I don't know how it happened, but there he was, a few aisles away. I saw him before he noticed us and for a moment I thought we could move and avoid seeing him, but of course, Mark saw us and he wasn't going to pass up the opportunity. He came straight towards us and started shouting, attracting attention as usual. He accused me of taking the children away from him, asking me if I was happy now that I had managed to turn them against him. He was making a scene, angry and not caring that we were in a public place. Ava stood still by my side and I could feel her tense up as Mark continued to shout. That was my limit. Before I had remained silent and let him speak, trying to be the mature person, but this time I couldn't keep quiet. I turned to him and asked him clearly and strongly how exactly he had taken his children away from him when he had been absent for 12 years. I asked him where he was during birthdays, Christmases, important moments, where he was when Liam had problems at school or when Ava needed support at her dance recital. I reminded him that he was the one who decided to leave, not me, and that his absence was entirely his decision. Mark didn't know how to respond. He stood there, surprised, while I let out 12 years of frustration. For the first time, I wasn't holding back, I wasn't being polite or measured. I was honest, and it felt good. It felt like finally closing a chapter that I didn't even know was still open. But then I noticed that people were starting to gather around, other shoppers were stopping to look, their trolleys idle as they watched the scene that Mark had created. And that's when I realized that I had said enough. I didn't need to prove anything to him or anyone else. Ava and I turned to leave, but Mark tried to follow us, still shouting something about how I had ruined his relationship with his children. Luckily, a shop assistant intervened. He stood between us and Mark and told him very clearly that if he took another step they would call the police. Mark seemed to want to argue, but he must have understood that he had no reason to do so. He backed down. And Ava and I left the shop. As I drove home, I kept thinking about what had happened. I can't explain everything I felt. A little relief, anger, sadness, and even some guilt for having lost my temper in public. Ava was quiet most of the way, but when we got home she told me she was proud of me for standing up to him. That meant a lot to me. Because all I've ever wanted is to show my children that they deserve better than what Mark gave them. Since that day, Mark has disappeared. None of our friends or family have heard from him. And the truth is, I don't care where he is, as long as my children and I are safe. That's the only thing that matters. He has proven time and again that he is only interested in causing trouble, and I am tired of letting it affect our lives. This experience has reminded me of what really matters. Liam and Ava. Liam is an adult now, but I know that all this has affected him a lot. He has always been quiet, keeping what he feels to himself, but I can see how much this has weighed on him. I am keeping an eye on him and making sure he knows I'm here if he needs to talk. As for Ava, I can tell she's still processing everything. She's strong and independent, but she's also only 17 and this has been too much for her. I've decided to talk to her about the possibility of going to therapy. I want her to have all the tools she needs to heal and move on. And if talking to a professional can help, then that's exactly what we're going to do. With all this, I've realized how important it is to focus on the life we've built together. All three of us. We don't need Mark and we never will. Liam and Ava are incredible young people and I couldn't be prouder of them. We've been through many difficult times together and each one has made us stronger. I can't thank you enough for the support and love you have shown me throughout this ordeal. Sharing what was happening to me here has helped me in ways I didn't expect, and the advice and support I have received has meant more than I can express. For now, I am closing this chapter and looking to the future, a future where we are safe, happy, and free from Mark's shadow. Thank you for being there for us.